bow your heads with me and close your eyes wherever you are, and let's talk to Jesus. Jesus, we have come again in your name. You have promised in the Gospels that where two or three are gathered together in your name, you will be in the midst to bless. As such tonight, Almighty God, we ask that you will bless us. May the content of this message tonight provoke, disturb, and bring someone closer to you, even as we learn a little bit more how to do that which we ought to for ourselves, our families, our church, our nation, and our world, and indeed our God. Bless us, we pray. In your holy name we ask. Amen. Amen. All right, guys, let's talk about it. A funny topic indeed. Colon or Columbus. It was in the early 2020s that I journeyed down to Panama, just next door Jamaica down there. Go look at the Panama Canal and to go visit the Embarrassed Indians and to go sail on the Mediterranean and the Caribbean and the Pacific Ocean all at once. Wow, I didn't even know that such things existed right beside me. All three oceans merging together right there in Panama. And I had the privilege of going to sail on this combination of all three oceans. And then we journeyed on a lake in Panama that is said to be the second largest man-made lake in the world. It's called the Gatun Lake, the second largest man-made lake in the world, right? And so that was an interesting thing as we journeyed. But while we were going to the Panama Canal that particular day, they took me to a place and they placed us on a train that, believe you me, in all the travels I have done around the world, and thank God I've had the privilege of going close to 1/2 of the world's population already in my young lifetime. I've never seen a train as ugly as the Panama train that I saw in about 2002, 20 years ago. The thing was the ugliest thing I could have ever thought I could see, with all types of colors and stuff. And man, to me, it looked ugly, really ugly. But might I tell you that when we embarked upon the train, when we got in the train, it was perhaps the most beautiful of trains I have ever traveled on in anywhere, in any part of the world. Oh, we had velvet seats and we had glass tables, and it was a phenomenal experience as we journeyed through the hills and we learned about Panama and we learned about the canal and we learned about many things on that journey that day as we went towards the Panama Canal. And I was astonished to observe back then that tour guides in Panama some had got PhDs, others had masters, and I'm saying, wow. And then we were told on that trip that education back then, I'm not sure what it is now, but education back then was dirt cheap in Panama. So everybody could have a doctorate if they wanted to. But while the tour guide led us along the way and guided us along the way, the tour guide made a statement which has become part of the presentation title this evening. And this is what the tour guide said. The gentleman said that some time ago, someone came to the Caribbean, to the West, our region of the world, and said he discovered us. And I'm going to be very decent now. I'm going to try very, very hard to be decent. But then the young man said in his guidance to us, he said that the name of the gentleman was Christopher Colon, C-O-L-O-N, what we in English call colon. I wonder if you see where I'm coming from. Christopher Colon. Yes, because he said that is what Columbus actually is in their language. And I said, wow, somehow I always thought that the brother who thought he had discovered our region of the world was mistaken. But then I heard the tour guide say on that day, he was not only mistaken, but he was colonic. Anyway, are you getting my sense of humor? Yes, Christopher Colon. And it's out of that that I chose this evening in talking about the colon, in talking about the human gut. So in my own little way, caption the presentation, colon or Columbus. Because our tour guide told me back then, they were indeed the same word. Now, having said that much and giving you the story, later on, you might get a little more as to why I leaned towards Columbus. But here's what we have been told. Hundreds of years now, scientists, doctors, medical scientists, researchers have been looking at the human gut and have been trying to understand the dynamics of the human gut. And somehow, in as much as we believe in today's science that we do understand, I want to put it to you that we have not even truly scratched the surface in such discoveries and knowledge. I believe that it's going to take a lifetime and perhaps an eternity for us to be able to understand this little structure called the human body. Every time we think we have discovered it all and we think we know it all, something new pops up and we have got to go back to the drawing board and make new discoveries. Tonight, I want to share with you some of the things we certainly understand about the human gut, because we have seen these in practice, we have seen these happening to people, and we understand that if we understand them better, we will indeed be able to have a better quality of life. So the question then is, or instead of the question, the statement then to anchor us is a traditional statement that is said by people in the world of naturopathy and medicine many years ago. Life and death begins in the colon. Hello? Somebody, are you there? Life and death begins in the colon. And that's a big statement. Last night we spoke about the microbiome. And if you recall, I told you that 80% of the microbiota, which is the colony of these microbes that inhabit and colonize the human being, 80% of them reside in the human gut. And therefore, our topic tonight about the colon is not distant in any way from that which we discussed last night. However, I want to make tonight a little bit more practical and bring the material down to you in a way that when you leave, you can truly, if you don't have it before, go out and practice that which you would have learned tonight. So life and death begins in the colon. Well, some time ago, someone said that there was a story, and the story related to the organs of the body having a conference. So this now is a conference by the organs, the liver, the lung, the kidney, the colon, and all the organs. They gathered at Organ City, and they decide that they would talk about which of them is most important. And the conversation went on back and forth. At one point, by the way, the colon decided to get up and speak. And by the time he raised his hand and was honored by the chair and got up, somebody around the corner, it must have been the liver, that shouted, "Shut up, you smelly old sewage system, sit down." And the colon felt embarrassed and he sat down, or should I say it sat down. But later on, as the liver pontificated and argued, here was what the liver said. The liver said, "I am the most important organ in the body because I am the only organ that carries out more than 500 chemical processes every day. Nobody else does what I do." And furthermore, the liver said, "I am the only organ, come on now, I am the only organ that if you cut off a quarter of me, I can regenerate on my own. I can grow back on my own without the help of no one else." And man, the guy started to go silent. And then the heart spoke up, and the heart said, "Remember, if I stop, you're in trouble." And then the brain spoke up and said, "Hey, don't forget I control all the electrical impulses and all of that argument going on." And they spoke and they spoke and they spoke. And then finally, the colon said, I think the time has come for me to man up and stand up. And so guess what happened, ladies and gentlemen? The colon finally said, it's my turn. And then the colon got up and he said, you know, guys, I love what the liver said. I appreciate what the brain said. I know that the kidney is speaking the truth about releasing the excreta, urinary material. But let me tell you guys something. I am the boss. And so the story of the colon went on. The essence of the story, to cut the long story short for you, is that it has become understood in modern medicine, and in particular naturopathic medicine, that the colon really has such a significant role in not only in the digestion of food and in the performance of the gut, but that the colon is so critical to every other organ, gland, and system in the human body. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, if you were to get rid of the colon, you would not be around for a long, long time, because you would not be able to truly function. Others have gone in, have done surgeries, have removed parts of the colon, and the body suffers because of those parts that are gone. What you're seeing on the screen then is a simple illustration of what it means when we say that the colon is inversely related to every organ, system, gland, cell in the human body. In other words, on your large intestine that we call the colon, there is a location that has a connection to some part of your system indirectly throughout the entire body. And if that portion of the colon becomes congested, becomes disrupted, becomes disturbed, then you have those kinds of problems. And as you can see, that's a nice little spread before you. Time won't allow me to get into all the details, but bear that in mind as we go through. The colon is of great significance in your health and well-being. Last night, I also spoke about the fact that there is a brain-gut connection. And sometimes you hear people talk about having a gut feeling. Because yes, what happens down there within the center is of critical importance to what happens to the rest of the body. In fact, there are some who tell us that if the colon and the gut is clean, is kept healthy, then the rest of the body will be healthy. It is impossible for the body to come down with cancers and other diseases if the digestive system, the gut, the whole central region is healthy and optimal in function. And central to all of that is your colon, the large intestine. So on the screen now, we have just a quick run for those who want to remember the biology you did back then. And you're looking there at a diagrammatic form of the whole digestive system. So here's what happens. Somebody asked, tell me something about that tube that makes up the digestive system. And I'd be very happy to say in the first word, I'd be very happy to say that the entire tube begins in the mouth and ends in the anus. Can I repeat that? It is one single solitary tube. It begins in the mouth and it ends in the anus. And so I like to tell people sometimes when I'm doing these sessions face to face, I like to point out that, hey, you may be Coca-Cola bottle shaped, but you're one tribe. No matter what your shape might be, you are one tribe. Because guess what? We are all one tribe. It is one single solitary tube that opens in the mouth, comes down up here where you see number one, where the esophagus, and then it comes all the way down into this area called the stomach, number three, called the stomach. And then it expands into a bigger organ, but it's the same tube. And at number five right here, if you're looking on your screen, number five, it then gets to a little closure where the stomach closes back. And that now leads into the curly middle thing in the middle right here that we call the small intestine. And then the small intestine runs all the way down until it gets down to number 10, right down here at number 10. where the small intestine joins with what we call the large intestines. And that is what we call the colon, the large intestine. And having said that much, the colon then goes up and you'll feel a little bit more, and it comes all the way down until at the very tip here, it comes back to the anus. So if you're observing carefully then, the human digestive system or tract is one single tube from mouth to anus. All of us have got a one-track situation. Hey, let's look at this. The question then that really comes out of this is whether or not the human body experiences disease or health is largely dependent, on the state of your colon. According to some estimates, more than 50 million Americans suffer from some kind of bowel problem, which are often related to an unhealthy colon. More than 50 million Americans. When you think about that, you're thinking about a population, an American population of just about, give and take, 200 million people. And you're looking at more than 1/4 of that population suffers from bowel problems, colon issues of one kind or another. Here in Jamaica and the Caribbean, and I speak primarily from Jamaica where I am at, here in Jamaica, there is a saying about Jamaica. And I think, having traveled around most of the Caribbean, I think it's true also. The saying says, if America sneezes, we catch the cold. And therefore, my argument to you is, if more than 1/4 of the American population suffers from bowel problems, I put it to you that the Caribbean is no less. And one of the reasons for that is simply because we eat and live and tend to live just about the same way. Now, let us take a closer look at what we call the colon. Remember, as I showed you on 2 previous slides, the fact that the bowel, right here, where you see in the middle, the ileocecal valve, where this arrow, that is actually where the small intestine, the curly thing in the middle, I showed you earlier on, connects with the large intestine at the ileocecal valve. And it's a one-way valve, which means that when it lets the food material through, the material should not be able to come back up into the small intestine. It should work its way down. It then gets into what we call the cecum, and from the cecum we go to the ascending colon, and then we come to this little bend, and then we come all the way across what we call the transverse colon, and the word transverse means across. It runs right below your navel, your belly button from side to side. So bear that in mind, because a lot of our women who have period and menstrual problems are having such problems because the transverse colon is compacted with feces and is resting. And by the way, just in passing, bear this in mind, here is this bend over here on the left-hand side, and then the other bend over here on the right-hand side. These two bends, by the way, sit just on top of the fallopian tubes in a woman. And to many women who suffer from period problems, menstrual discomfort, it's not merely a hormonal issue. Sometimes it is largely because the bowel is congested. It's not letting out the fecal matter properly, and is now putting a pressure or a burden on the fallopian tube. And that creates massive problems for the woman's monthly issues in passing. And then over here, we come to the descending colon, and from the descending colon into the sigmoid, and then we come to the rectal sac, and then all the way out to what we call the anus, which is the end portion of the large intestine where the feces leaves the body. And remember, I said that the digestive system really is a system that begins in the mouth and ends in the anus. Now, I wanted to make another observation as I move on very quickly. Notice that the colon looks as if it's a gathered waist dress. Those of us who are dressmakers understand that when we put a piece of the thing just won't come to my mouth. But when we're doing the dress and we put elastic, yes, the elastic in there. If the elastic is shorter than the material of the dress, then we gather it and we get pleats and stuff like that, right? Don't worry, not too knowledgeable about dressmaking, but I've seen them do it. Now, the colon looks something similar. And the reason why it looks that way is because the muscle that runs through the colon is shorter than the length of the colon itself. And so it pulls up the colon, and the colon then has what we call circulations or little pockets all the way through, represented by these layers you're seeing going all the way across. Now, I made that point because I want you to understand that it's going to be relevant to what happens to you when you end up with constipation or you end up with fecal impaction or anything like that that your doctor might tell you about. That is absolutely important to bear in mind. But such is the colon, and it is in this organ that the bulk of the final processing of food takes place, and also the production of fecal waste. Now, let's look at some interesting facts as we try to pull the story together. Number one, we all have or should have what is called a transit time, a healthy transit time. Now, the transit time is the time between when you consume a meal, let us say at 6 o'clock this evening, you consume your evening meal. Within 12 hours after that, you should be passing out the waste material from the food you consumed at 6 p.m. Or some reports tell us that it goes up to 16 hours. So 12 hours from 6 o'clock is 6 o'clock tomorrow morning. So if you had, for example, carrots and other stuff like that in your diet, in your meal this evening at 6, by 6 o'clock tomorrow morning, you should be going to the bathroom to release the fecal material from the food you ate at 6 o'clock this evening. Or at most by 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. And if you're not having that kind of experience in your bowel flow and bowel movement, then I put it to you that you are a sitting time bomb for bowel irregularities and or colon cancers of different kinds, because the body needs to release the stuff. Good. Now, many experts believe that the average person like me and you, the average adult like me and you, walk around with anywhere from 5 to 25 pounds of accumulated waste in their colon. And I want to further put it to you this evening that a lot of us who have what you may call a rum belly, or in my culture, they call it rum belly when the belly is big and protruding out there. In some other cultures, they call it married man belly. But we have all types of names for it. But a protruding tummy. Very often we think that it's because the person is fat. But I want to put it to you this evening, brothers and sisters, ladies and gentlemen, that very often that belly comes as a result of the colon carrying a lot of extra feces that the body did not let go. I want that to sink in, so making sure that I pause at that very quickly. Now, we're also told that the colon is regarded as really toxic when you have about 40 pounds or more. There is a story, one knows whether or not it is true, and probably it's not even true, but it is said that by the time John Wayne, the movie star, died, he had some 95 pounds of stool stockpiled in his own colon. I don't know if the story is true, but that is a rumor that went around some time ago. I have traveled to a number of churches and a number of places, and I remember getting to a particular church one day, and someone said to me, "Lord, doctor, we wish you had come a little bit sooner because grandma just died, and all the feces was coming out of her mouth." Oh, gruesome, you say, but there's a message in it. Because once we allow the colon to hold on to fecal matter for too long, what happens is that the peristaltic activity, that contraction relaxation process that is designed to push the feces out, that process breaks down. And when the peristaltic activity of the colon breaks down, remember I spoke to you earlier on about the ileocecal valve right here, right? And when it breaks down and the stool begins to come back up and up and up and across and is pressed down back through to the cecum, eventually the feces begin to break the barrier of the ileocecal valve and gets back in the small intestine. And this lady had an experience where the fecal matter was moving upwards her digestive tract in such a way that by the time she died, the feces was coming through her mouth. What is my point? It is not to scare you. No, it is to say to you this evening that your bowel is significant to your health and is one of the most major components of health within, in terms of the detoxification and elimination process, without which none of the other processes of the human body can function optimally. So it's of critical importance that you take care of your digestive system. You're not only supporting the microbiome, but you're also ensuring that the bowel functions in the way it should. And take note of this. In the USA again, and we use the United States as a model, in the USA again, over 100,000 colostomy surgeries are performed each and every year to remove parts of the colon, because the bowel is diseased. And once you have a diseased bowel, the rest of the body is going to be diseased. You cannot have health if your bowel is diseased. No matter how good you eat, no matter how much water you drink, no matter how much sunlight you get, no matter how good the food might be, if the bowel is not processing effectively, you're having a problem. Wow. Enough said on that one. Let's run along quickly. Now, the National Institute of Health, NIH, published some years ago that some 4.5 million Americans are constipated most or all of the time. What is your own status? Are you constipated? When you go to the toilet, to the loo, as some call it, do you struggle to pass your feces? Do you struggle to release the waste material from the food you have consumed? Are you like a Jamaica defense member told me some years ago when I was there, and the lady looked at me and she said, "Sir, I only go in that place in order to clean it." And when that happens, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, when you suffer from such irregularities, you now have a situation where you have anger management issues, you have hormonal imbalances, you have temperamental issues, you have all types of issues come about. And very often, because of the condition of your bowel, which most doctors do not think of as part of early diagnosis, because of the condition of your bowel, you end up having all types of issues that your doctor is unable to track. When next you go to see your doctor, I challenge you, make sure that the doctor is looking at the state of your bowel. Also, again, we have another report that suggested that some 2.5 million doctor visits per year are made by patients to complain of constipation. Constipation is a big issue. Now, 80%, we're told, of all disease and discomfort is related to the bowel, the condition of your gut. And that is why in naturopathic schools, we teach across the world that when you do not know, and this is one of the things they told us in the early days, and they said, when you do not know what's wrong with the patient, one of your best approach always is to shoot for the center, to go for the middle, because if the middle is not working well, the periphery cannot be well. My God. If the middle is not working well, the periphery cannot function well. So if the bowel is not working well, if the digestive system, the gut, is not working well, then bear in mind that you are going to have mental issues, issues with brain functions, issues with emotions, issues with diabetes, issues with cancers, issues with the heart, issues with the kidney, issues with your entire being. Because all organs and systems are inversely related to what goes on in your gut. Absolutely important. Now, the colon, we call it the large intestine. It is also one of the most important parts of the digestive system, and it is often referred to as a sewer system of the human body. Many years ago, when I operated, part owner and operator of what was then called the Colon Care Center in Jamaica, a lady rang the office up, and when she rang the office, she said, she heard me on the phone, and she said, "Sir, it's good to hear a man answering the phone. By the way, what do you guys do there?" You see, we operated a colonic device where we inserted a tube in the anus of our clients, and we send gallons of water up to wash out the muck, the grease, the grime, the sludge, the parasites, and all the stuff that would flow out of people. And so I said to the lady, "My God, lady, you know what? I am so happy to announce that we are the human cesspool people." Because indeed, that was what we were doing. We were operating as cesspoolers. We were cleaning the ticks out of people. And we had clients, by the way, guys, all across the world. People would come to us, especially during the summer holidays, because it would be a little cheaper to do that process in Jamaica. And we would have people coming from all across the globe. And might I tell you also that there was a point at which we saw people from all walks of life, be they doctors, lawyers, politicians, teachers, housewives, masons, tradesmen, students. It really didn't matter. Children, adults, we were seeing people, because what we have learned out of this experience is that our society is a society that is full of it. Oh, this is a church service. Oh, let me behave myself. It's a society that is full of it. And because of the accumulated, because of the waste material that is not leaving the body, the mind becomes putrefied, the body suffers, emotions are destroyed, the organs go to pieces, our spirituality falls, because now we can't focus and concentrate on our God as much as we should, because we don't understand that we're having an unhealthy colon. The Lord sent me here tonight to advise you that you need to pay more attention to your center, because when you do, your worship will be more glorious and your fellowship will be sweeter. Your relationship with others will get better, because you will have proper management of you when you have proper bowel release. Now, before I tell you about the signs, and I want to take at least another 10 minutes or so to try to wrap it up for you. Bear in mind that one of the things we say in naturopathic medicine and in bowel management seminars, we say that for every meal you consume, there should be a bowel action. Let me repeat that. A meal is equal to a bowel action. And the truth is, if you're not having it like that, regardless of what some practitioners might tell you, I want to ask you to listen to this carefully and go out and do your own due diligence and weigh the matter for yourself. A meal, each meal should be followed by a bowel action. In other words, the average ones of us consume 3 meals per day. Oh yeah, there are some one-mealers. I don't know if you ever met them, but they eat 24/7 around the clock. We're not talking about those, right? And then there are some 2-mealers, those who will only have a morning meal and an evening meal. That has its advantages as well as its disadvantages. But then the average ones of us have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And if you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you should be having breakfast, lunch, and dinner release. Did I hear the church say amen? Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Yes, If you have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you should have breakfast, lunch, and dinner release. Every meal should be followed by a bowel action. That is how the architect of the human body designed our structure. And if you think it's not true, because as we get bigger, more knowledgeable, more educated, science tends to twist us quite a bit sometimes. But if you think it's not true, then you look at the newly born babe, the baby that is not yet gone to the family table, the baby that is not yet eating the same way mommy and daddy eat at the table. That baby, almost after every meal that baby has, the baby poos or poops. Huh? Is that true? Think about it. Another thing, if you think it's not true, then let's take a look over in the animal kingdom. And you will notice also that the animals have a tendency whereby after every meal, they release. The human being, the whole digestive system, along with the peristaltic activity of the small and large intestine, that is a contraction and relaxation of the muscles, is designed by the maker that when the stomach is full and the pressure of the food gets down there, it should kick that peristaltic activity in place, causing the body to want to release. Most of us, therefore, do not experience that because our system has broken down. Is there hope? Yes, there is. Let's continue and bring our presentation tonight to a close. I'm showing you on screen right now 6 of the signs on unhealthy colon. There are many others, but these are 6 of the more prominent ones you can look out for and make a determination if you need to go see your doctor or what you need to do. Number 1, constipation. You heard earlier that 80% or more of Americans are constipated. And the rest of the world, especially the Western Hemisphere, is actually true. We consume 3 meals per day, 21 meals per week. Come on now, that is a mathematician. 3 meals per day, 21 meals per week, but we go to the bathroom, the toilet, to use the toilet once a day or 7 days, 7 times for the week. The question then that you need to ask yourself is this: where is the residue of the other 14 meals out of the 21 that you consume? If you did not pass it out, I put it to you, it is sitting down there in the colon as a time bomb, and it is going to explode in one shape, form, or size somewhere down the road. If you're constipated, you need to find answers. You need to find your doctor. You need to discuss the thing with your doctor. You need to look at your diet again, look at a number of things, but we're coming down to that close, and I'll give you a few suggestions. Another of the issues that we face when we have bowel problems is that we suffer from fatigue and sleeplessness. A lot of us can't sleep, and we think it is brain issue and other issues going on. No, sometimes it's just the fact that you are full of it. You are congested to the zenith. And because the bowel is not able to do what it should do for the body, then it disturbs the sleep cycle. Others of us have headache and muscle aches because of bowel problems. Others have poor complexion and acne because of bowel problems. Others suffer from hemorrhoids, what we in Jamaica call pile. Yes. Others have a lot of parasite infestation. And there are some of us who like to think that we are so sophisticated and nice that we don't have parasite. Let me tell you something here. It is not a matter of whether or not you have parasites. It's only a matter of how much do you have. Oh Lord, help me tonight. It's a matter of how much you have, and not a matter of whether or not. Everybody, there is parasites in the water, there is parasites in the food, there is parasites on the very seat you're sitting down on right now. There is parasite on the bed you may be lying down listening to me on. There are parasites all over. I told you last night that you are more microbes than you are human. My word. Let's continue with some of these again, because I want to wrap them up quickly for you. A healthy individual, therefore, has a colon that is working properly. And in that sense, we say at least 2 or 3 bowel movements per day. Now let's look at the feces for a little bit. The feces you let go when you go to the toilet should be large, should be well formed, it should have buoyancy, it can float, and not accompanied by a foul odor. It should be brown in color. It should look something like a speckled ripe banana. Yeah, it should be about 4 inches long or more. And I don't know about you, but when I go to that special place, and when I sit down, and sometimes I sit down there and I start to do my thing. You see, I do a lot of reading when I go inside there sometimes. And I bring my material and I'm reading or I'm watching a video and I'm doing something. And somehow I feel a little movement, you know, a little. And then I sit there because I say, no, man, more needs to come. And sometimes because I think more needs to come, I start to put a little pressure and a little thing to try to move some more. But I don't know if you're like me. But nothing else comes. And I'm saying, no, man, this ain't right. But when I get up and look back, and by the way, guys, whenever you go to the loo, for God's sake, when you're done, look back. You should always look at that which you have put down. When I look back, I see a long 12-inch thing curling around the toilet bowl. Can you imagine? Just from a slight, you hardly feel that it's gone, but it's gone. You see, when you're eating your fruits, nuts, vegetables, and grains, and your life is doing what it should do, the bowel cooperates and works with you better. So yes, it should be large. It should be well formed. It should not be diarrhea. It should be soft but formed. It should be buoyant, and it shouldn't carry a foul odor. In fact, if your stool has a foul odor, it is even a greater indication to you that a lot of parasites are in the cecum of your large intestine. And perhaps it is because you did not digest your food properly, because you did not begin by chewing properly. But let's run along. We want to cover a few more things quickly. Waste material deposits along the colon wall. Remember I showed you earlier on those circulations? Well, yeah, here is something I want you to bear in mind. In those little pockets which I showed you, like the gathered waste skirt, where the bowel pulls up and makes these little pockets. In those little pockets, feces can be housed in those pockets for 10, 15, 30 years and do not come out of your body. I better cool. Some of us are walking around with stool in our bowels, in our bodies from 10, 15 years ago. I saw a Rasta man into my Oterius office many years ago. And when the colonic was done, rotten meat came out of the Rasta man's bowel. Rotten meat. And when we showed him the specimen and what came out of him, the Rasta man said, boy, Jano Star, I man not touch them, there's something there for more than 10 years. No. The Rasta man had not consumed flesh, animal, for more than 10 years, and rotten meat from the time he stopped consuming animal food was still in his colon. My word. My word, my word, my word. Here's what I'm going to do tonight. My heart is telling me, you know what? I'm going to end this meeting tonight after I'm through with these staggering facts. And then tomorrow night, when we come back, I am going to reiterate a few points and conclude this presentation tomorrow night. Because somehow the Spirit is telling me, Marlon, don't go too fast. And if you try to rush it, your audience won't get the full length and breadth of the message. And here's what we know. A few more things, and then I will try to bring it down for you. And then what we will do tomorrow night, so if you're here tonight, you've got to make sure you come back tomorrow night. because I'm going to give you part 2 of this story tomorrow night. And in part 2, I'm going to talk a lot about your dietary practices. I'm going to talk about what you eat, how you should eat it, why you shouldn't eat it. I'm going to talk about your water consumption. I'm going to talk about your supplementation. I'm going to wrap up part 2 tomorrow night. We're going to bring this thing down with a grand crescendo on what it is you're doing to destroy your gut and why you need to fix that situation to have the better health that you want. But let's look at about another slide or 2 and then we bring it down tonight. There may be some questions. I want to give you an opportunity to ask based on what I've said already. All right. So waste material deposits along the colon. In that colon wall, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, as I told you, this man had fecal matter in there for 10 years. But even more interesting, there was a story of an American soldier who went to war, whether it was Vietnam or where, I don't quite remember, but it has been a well-known story among us. He went to war and he got badly beaten up, but eventually he was one of the soldiers that made it back home to America. 30 years after the war, this soldier died. And for some reason, they had to, in the autopsy, they decided to take a look at his colon. And they found certain seeds from fruits this soldier had consumed in his lifetime. And when they did an investigation into the seeds, they could not find that fruit existent in America. And so they traced it all the way back to the soldiers' war days. I think it was down in Vietnam. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the residue of something abiding in your colon 30 years after you consume it. If you have not decided to live a certain kind of lifestyle, to work on your gut and keep your bowel clean, you could have material stockpile in you even now from 5, 10, 20 years ago. Another story. Many years ago in our Kingston office, we saw a medical doctor that was around 81 years old at the time. He was retired and all. He had developed this mass in his colon, this cancerous mass in his colon. His family took him to the doctors, and of course, being a medical doctor himself, he was going to get the best of the treatments that the medical system of Jamaica could offer. But somehow, after the doctors had done all the analyses and the diagnosing and all of that, they then decided that the best thing to do is to give the brother a surgery to remove that, what is called a cancerous mass. The wife was a little scared. And so she said, you know, I don't want my husband. I am scared. I would rather to live with him until he dies with this situation than to allow him to go through a surgery at this point. Because you know the if, buts, and maybes of surgery, right? And so she decided against it. While she was deciding against it, someone said to the woman, Mrs. So-and-so, have you ever heard of the Colon Care Center, which was the name of the operation I was in back then? And she said, no. He said, well, it's right there at 28 Southernmere Road, halfway through in Kingston, Jamaica. And that woman brought her husband. We assessed the case and we said, you know what? We really don't think it's cancerous, but we're not absolutely sure. But if you allow us to give the gentleman a series of colonics to clean the bowel out as much as possible, there can be no harm to doing so, because even if it's cancerous, then it's going to clear the passage enough to make a surgery even more operable, the situation better to work on. And so the wife agreed. And we agreed on a number of sessions, which were finally administered. When the sessions were done and we saw the indications we wanted to see, we asked the lady to take her husband back to the medical facility to have him reassessed. He was reassessed. And having been reassessed, the results came back. That mass that the doctors diagnosed as cancerous, that was so big that it was blocking the entire colon, and it was hard and so bad that they said it had to be operated on to be removed. That mass, ladies and gentlemen, was completely gone, and the man's bowel was back to normal. You imagine that. And so there are times when we need to take a closer look at what's going on down there, because very often it can be misdiagnosed. And that is why in naturopathy, we say, shoot for the center. There are some people whose bowels have been cleaned. And having been cleaned, what we find is a lot of rubber-like, thick, hard rubber-like material, like the tire on your car, literally coming out of the human body. And once the bowel becomes clean, the system now begins to work better. I'll bypass that and come back here, because tomorrow night I'm going to wrap it up for you. The question then I want to ask you is, what is your lifestyle like? Is your life filled with anxiety? Is your life filled with stress? Is your life filled with pain? Is your life filled with disease conditions and all types of emotional and natural problems that come upon you? Are you someone that is unforgiving and unloving? Because all these things can affect your colon. Look at what you're looking at here tonight. This came out of a living human being. To show after you go through a series of a proper cleansing of this system, the rubbery material that is locked into the circulations of your colon, that is blocking your digestion, blocking the proper function of your microbiome, breaking down your immune system. Ladies and gentlemen, this is heavy stuff. I'm going to pause here tonight because I want you to ask a few questions. Tomorrow night, I am going to pick up when I look at the dietary and lifestyle side of how you can correct this whole bowel management situation. All right? But let me just give you these 12 then, and then I will shut up. Some of the danger signs, I showed you some before, but I have them here in a 12 form. Unexplained weight gain. Are you gaining weight and you don't know why you're gaining weight, but your body mass index is increasing? It could be that you're having a bowel problem. Are you having abdominal discomfort down there? You're having all kinds of pains and discomfort? Bowel problem indicated. Are you having dull skin and dull hair? Bowel problem indicated. Are you having unexplained fatigue? Oh, you are just lethargic and fatigued and you don't know why? Bowel problems indicated. Are you having protruding belly, what we call the rum belly, or the married man belly, or that kind of something, and you can't break it? Bowel problem indicated. Are you having irritable bowel syndrome, issues going on? Bowel problems indicated. What about bad breath? Are you suffering from halitosis? There are some of us who have bad breath because we may be having a cold or a sinus drainage or something like that. But then there are other people who have bad breath, not because they're having these issues or because they're having dental issues. No, some of us have got bad breath because the lungs pick up the stench from the sewage system down below and bring it all the way upwards. Woo. So the next time someone around you has bad breath, you may suggest that they go to the dentist. You may suggest that they do certain oral hygiene, but it might not be about their oral hygiene at all. It might simply be that the sewage system below is congested and is creating problem up above. Oh Lord, help me here. Are you having constipation? We look at that as a bowel problem indicated. Are you having bloating and a lot of gaseousness? Yes, bowel problem. Are you having flatulence and all that kind of stuff? Yes, bowel problem. Are you having indigestion? Yes, bowel problem. Are you having mental fog? Yes, bowel problem. Are you having dementia? Yes, your bowel can be indicated. And we could go on and on and on. Some of the warning signs you should look for when the bowel is experiencing toxicity. With this, ladies and gentlemen, tonight, I'm going to pause here because I've got a whole lot more and time is not going to allow it.